page 46, lesson 10, the key of E minor. E minor is the relative minor key of G major. Shares the same key signature. We have an F sharp in the key signature. Make sure that you play your F sharps. First string, fourth string, sixth string. Here's the scale in E minor, natural minor form. The scale in E minor, harmonic minor form, has got a D sharp. The D sharp is the leading tone in E harmonic minor. It leads to E. D sharp, E. So you have two of those, one on the fourth string, one on the second string. Here's the E harmonic minor scale. Remember when we were talking about the scales, the interval pattern of major scales, you had a series of whole steps and half steps. And also in the natural minor form, you have a series of whole steps and half steps. In harmonic minor, you have a series of whole steps and half steps, but you actually have 1.5 steps because you're going from C to D sharp. C to D sharp, here's another D sharp, you can see it better. C to D sharp is 3 frets. One fret would be a half step, another fret would be a whole step, so that's 1.5 steps. That's the D sharp. So that's what's unique about the harmonic minor scale. At the bottom of page 46, we have the E minor scale study. On page 47, we have Interlude in E minor. On this one, you have the PM pattern on the right hand, similar to Asturias and Malagueña. And you'll need to keep these bass notes down, let them ring, because that's where the bass melody is in this one. Make sure you play on the very tips of the left-hand fingers, because you have adjacent strings that need to be ringing while you're holding down bass notes. Here. So make sure you play on the very tips of your left hand. Alright, here's Interlude in E minor. On page 48, we have a famous little solo by Carulli, Waltz in E minor. On this one, make sure you bring out the first string notes because you'll need to sort of extract a melody out of the arpeggio patterns, especially in the third measure. The melody really is coming out like this. So try to bring those first string notes out. Also, when you get down to the third line after the fine there is the third section of the piece. It's a very different part of the piece. You have this chord here, and then you need to move your second and first fingers up to the third position to play these two notes. Try to avoid the temptation of sliding. You might like the sound of that, but I wouldn't recommend doing it every time you play it, because you can kind of get in the habit of doing that every time you do a shift. You want to be able to either do it or not do it. So I would practice it without any kind of slide there. It's really a shift and not a slide. Also, in the last measure of the fourth line, you have this section that is fairly complicated. You have what's called contrary motion between the first string and second string. Starts out like this. So really try to follow that second string line. That's D, D, C sharp, C natural, B, while the melody goes up. So right there you'll see the melody and the accompanying notes sort of dovetail like this and spread out. So it's a nice little line there. So make sure you pay close attention to that. You also have DC al fine on this one, so that means that da capo al fine means you go back to the beginning. Typically do not play the repeats after you go to the beginning and then end the piece on the fine. A lot of students kind of ignore that, and it sort of sounds strange to end it at the bottom of the page because you're actually ending on G rather than E minor. At the bottom of the page, we have arpeggio speed study. This is a good exercise for right hand control. You really want to make sure that you plant your fingers on the right hand notes, especially the first string note, the A finger. Really try to get a nice, clear, strong contact with that. repeated. Work on accenting different fingers on this one in the arpeggio to help you with the with control on the right hand. These are in sextuplets, so it's da 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 da. All right, rather than 4 16th notes, you'll have 6 16th notes in a beat. Page 49 is an old sea shanty called the Banks of Newfoundland. This one, you'll need to make sure that you pay close attention to the shifts. Third line down, third measure. So make sure you pay close attention to that. It's a good one to memorize because you'll need to really pay close attention to the left-hand shifts. This one is also in 6/8 time. The melody by itself sounds like this. Also right there you have, if you'll notice, the third full measure. You have the fermata sign there, and also the rolled chord. There's a rolled chord there. The squiggly line is a roll rather than a block chord. And the fermata, which some people used to call a bird's eye, that means you hold that chord down longer than it's really indicated. There's the fermata and the rolled chord there. Another thing that you need to make sure that you do is the third line down. There's a hammer on. Make sure you play that clearly and make sure you play that in time. For example, it's going to happen on the last 8th note of 6/8 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it happens right there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that. All right. Make sure you play that evenly. You don't pick the second note. This is an ascending slur, also called a hammer-on. There's also one down at the 5th line down, the first measure there. On page 50, we have 4 notes that are moving up the fingerboard. These are some of the higher notes that you make sure you need to make sure that you know. B, 7th fret, C, 8th fret, D is the 10th fret, and E is the 12th fret first string. E is easy to remember because it's right there where the neck and the body meet on a classical guitar. On a steel string, a lot of times steel string guitars, the neck and the body meet at the 14th fret, so you would need to play right here. But if you have a classical guitar, the E is right there where the 12th fret is, the neck and the body meet right there. It's actually the halfway point between the bridge saddle and the nut. You can kind of tell right here, the halfway point. That's the octave higher than the open E, E and E, right there at the 12th fret. Read with me on page 50. When performing higher and lower first string notes together, the lower note will need to be played on a string other than the first string. In Swamp Daze, the high G will be played on the 2nd string, 8th fret, because the high B a higher note than G, is played on the first string. Can you figure out some other places on the fingerboard where the G and B could be played together? Refer to the chart on page 4 for help. Remember, the circled number is the string number. So in Swamp Daze, make sure you pay close attention to string numbers. The circled numbers are telling you which string to play on. This really does specify where you're going to be playing a particular note. If you see a string number, the number with the circle, you know that the composer or the arranger, whoever put the finger numbers in this case me, they really want you to play those notes in certain places. And sometimes those are the only places you can play the particular note. So for example, in Swamp Daze, you're going to be playing the B that's on the first string. So that means you can't play the G that's supposed to be played with it at the same time, because you can only play one note on a particular string. So that G will be needing to be played on the 8th fret, 2nd string, 8th fret, 2nd string, and the B on the 7th fret, 1st string. To add a little style to this, you might want to bend the strings a little bit, push them up, gives it a little more of a bluesy sound. Like that. You can practice doing that. Alright. The other thing is you'll have some big shifts here. If you look at the 3rd measure of the 2nd line, you have this little movement here. You have to shift all the way from 10th position back to 1st position. So Swamp Daze is another good one to memorize. Notice that at the bottom of the page you have 1st and 2nd endings. You do the 1st ending, go back to the very beginning, and then when you come down, you'll skip the 1st ending and play the 2nd ending to finish the piece. Also, this one ends with a rolled chord. The last line also has these notes that are a second apart again, where they're offset like this, and it almost looks like you should play them at different times or something, but no, these are played exactly at the same time. Pay close attention to the way this line moves. So it goes like that. Alright, just go straight down like this on the 2nd string. That's another one where you notice the flat there. The next note that happens after that is also flat. Here's Swamp Daze. On page 51, we're going to talk about 2 more types of minor scales. I introduced these minor scales in the key of E minor. Keep in mind that these minor scales, the melodic minor and jazz minor scales, also occur in any other key, not just E minor. I just happened to introduce them in E minor in the book. So read with me on page 51. In addition to the natural and harmonic minor scales, there is another minor scale, the melodic minor scale. In this scale, the 6th and 7th notes of the scale are raised 1/2 step, 1 fret, only when the scale is ascending. When the scale is descending, the 6th and 7th notes return to the natural minor form. Listen closely to the effect that is produced by the raising and lowering of the 6th and 7th notes, also called scale degrees. J.S. Bach-Bourret on page 52 is a brilliant example of the melodic minor scale in a composition. So here's the scale in E minor, melodic minor form. Jazz minor is the same pattern as the ascending melodic minor scale, but does not go back to natural when descending. And jazz musicians a lot of times refer to jazz minor scale as melodic minor. They don't call it jazz minor. The distinction between jazz minor and melodic minor scale, though, is put in here because there is a difference between the two. The jazz minor form is the same ascending and descending. So the jazz minor takes the melodic minor's ascending form, but also plays it the same way going down. So that gives it a particular flavor and allows for some interesting chords to be played while that scale is being played. So here's the jazz minor form. Bottom of page 51, we have the harmonic minor in 7th position. Playing notes higher up on the fretboard is not difficult if you can stay in a fixed position. On the guitar, a position is determined by where the left-hand first finger will fret the notes in a musical phrase. The other left-hand fingers will fall in line, one after the other, first, second, third, fourth. In the example below, the first finger notes will play on the 7th fret, second finger on the 8th fret, third finger 9th fret, fourth finger 10th fret. On this scale, this is just a partial harmonic minor in 7th position. Doesn't go all the way up to the high E. Learning this partial E minor harmonic minor scale in the 7th position will allow the guitar 1 part of Katibim on page 54 to be easily learned. The first note of this little scale will be 3rd string, 9th fret. Now I'll give you the fret numbers, I'll give you the string numbers, and I'll also give you the finger numbers, pretty much everything I'm giving you. But you need to be able to read the notes when you play the guitar 1 part of Katibim. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Continuing on page 52, we have Bach-Bourret. This is part of his 4th lute suite. It originally was intended to be played as a solo. You could try to play it as a solo if you want to play both parts at the same time. You'll need to change the fingerings that are written in here. But it's a fun duet. This version's a duet. Fun duet to play with somebody. Make sure that you pay close attention to the finger numbers, the string numbers. There are a lot of position shifts in this one, a lot of accidentals. You have to really watch what you're doing here. Down at the 7th measure, there is a mordant, a little trill that you need to do on the 4th string. This is in the guitar 1 part. You have an F sharp that you're gonna do an F sharp with a G, and just come down. Make sure your first finger stays down. Really quick hammer on and pull off ascending and descending slur. If you find that hard to do, don't worry about it. You can just play the F sharp. You don't have to play the, although it sounds pretty cool, so you might want to try it. On page 53, the guitar one part in particular has a lot of shifting. For example, on the second line, measures 17 and 18. Pay attention to these finger numbers and string numbers. Okay, it's probably the biggest challenge there. Guitar two part. Make sure you pay close attention to the accidentals. All right, here's Bourrée. 1, 2, 3. Page 54, we have another duet called Katibim. It's an old Turkish folk song. The guitar one part, you can stay in the 7th position. Remember that 7th position harmonic minor scale we learned? That's what you're going to be using for Katibim. This is in cut time. I'll go ahead and just count it in 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you'll repeat it. Just like what we did in Serving Spanish Style, it would be fun for you to switch parts with your duet partner. Here's what guitar 2 sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4.